Well, hello everyone, and I want to welcome you today to the Mel Carmine Show. And today we are so pleased to have back yet again to our show Larry Ballard. And we're going to dive deep into a wonderful topic all about Africa in our show today, which I believe is going to be very interesting and illuminating in terms of the information that Larry's going to share with us. But before we begin, just a few announcements. I want to remind everyone that we have our weekly live roundtable called The Forecast with Mel Carmine, Mike Barra, Laura Eisenhower, and yours truly. And that's every Monday at 4 p.m. Eastern. And you can catch us live on Rumble at XRPQFSTeam, as well as on X at Elisa M. Valentino and YouTube at Elisa V. Unscripted. Now, when it comes to your gold and silver needs, are you taking care of that? Are you doing what you need to do to build your gold and silver portfolio? Well, remember to reach out to Carmine's Gold at www.carminesgold.com. And if you prefer to email, you can go to info@carminesgold.com or call 321-455-8264. And that information will be in the description box below. And lastly, if you're dealing with some challenging times, difficult life transitions that you want support getting through, or maybe you're just trying to keep your vibration high to manifest the life you want, please reach out to me for my personal coaching service. You can schedule a free strategy call at hittingtherestartbutton.com, and I look forward to hearing from you. We really love you guys. We love the support. So please don't forget about our amazing sponsors below in the description box. And kindly give us a thumbs up and a share if you like the content. So Larry, welcome. Hey, Elisa V here. Sometimes life can really be unscripted. It changes, sometimes quietly and sometimes all at once. Divorce, retirement, an empty nest, or a career shift. It's a lot. But you don't have to go through it alone, nor should you. As your coach, I'm here to guide you through all of the chaos and help you strategize with compassion, clarity, and a plan. You'll get real support, thoughtful mentorship, and gentle accountability to move you forward. Because this isn't the end, it's just your beginning. So why don't you rewrite your next chapter with strength and confidence? Drop me an email at elisamvalentino@gmail.com and let's schedule a free strategy call.
Gold and silver. Welcome to carminesgold.com. Don't waste not even a second looking. Cheaper prices just don't exist. How important is it for you to own gold and silver right now? What does it mean to me personally? There's an economy that's about to crash beyond what words can explain. In 5 words, I'm going to educate you on gold and silver. Are you ready? You need to own some. Simple.
Thank you. Good to see you, Lisa.
How are you today?
I'm really good. It
Good.
stopped raining.
Oh my
We've
God, I
had
know.
rain for, the last 2 months.
Same here in New York. It's like
Crazy.
a little sticky, a little hot today, but I'll take it because the sun is out. So today we're gonna discuss an interesting topic. At least it's very interesting to me, and I'm sure our viewers are gonna find that as well. We're gonna focus on Africa. And I guess the best way to lead into it is to say that Africa will no longer submit to Western hegemony. And it has something the world needs, and it's going to chart its own course. And I know, as usual, you have some amazing slides that you weave the full story into. But I was hoping that maybe before we kind of, jump into a lot of the specifics, maybe you can enlighten and illuminate for the viewers a little bit of the backstory. How did we get to the point where they don't want to succumb anymore? But what happened? And I know off camera we were chatting, and you gave such a beautiful analogy of what happened to Africa.
Well, I think I can probably say that again. We'll find out.
Okay.
So what I did is I asked Elisa a question. And I asked her, did you ever play Monopoly? And she said, yeah. And I said, did you ever get Boardwalk? She said, yeah. Did you ever get Park Place? Yeah. Well, if you ever got Park Place and Boardwalk, did you ever lose? And she thought, and I said, you can't lose. And she says, well, not even if you own the railroads? And I said, no, because that's $200 a pop. You land on Park Place is 50 and $100. So who controls the money? Controls the world. That's the story that has been the control mechanism for hegemony for the entirety of the world. So bottom line, whoever controls these things, if you control natural resources, manufacturing and trade, that leads to money. Whoever controls the money buys the power and controls everything. That's what's happened for the last 300 years when the colonial empire became Boardwalk and Park Place, because they controlled all of the seaports around the world. They controlled trade, and they went into nations that were not as modernized as them, parked their ships out in the harbors with their cannons, and proceeded to go in and rape them and pillage them. They took their natural resources and they shipped them back to their parent corporations, to the parent companies where they manufactured them. And then they shipped them back to the nation they got the goods from at a 10-time markup. And so basically what they did, there's an excellent book if you really want to understand this in depth. It's called The Economic Hitman. It's been out for about 20 years. It's been rewritten 3 times. This guy was a financial genius. He worked for the corporations. He would go into third world countries and says, we got a deal for you. We'll loan you money to build a new port, to do new railroads, to build anything you want to build. And the idea behind it was that it was a debt trap. That what they would do is make sure that one way or the other, England did it, Europe did it, now recently China's done it, make sure that that deal had hooks in it and they would default. And then the next thing you know, that gold mine that they were developing was owned by a foreign country. That seaport is under a 99-year lease. And the nation that had the resources is still in poverty. They're in chains, invisible chains of slavery that are imposed by hegemony from the Western nations, and in recent years from China. That is no longer possible because they've managed to get enough money in Africa that what they did is they send their young kids all around the world to the best schools, and they came back because they had pride in their country. And they now are engineers that are inventing all kinds of things. And they're saying, no longer will you control and manipulate us. It's going to be business on our terms. And I'll give you a little background that goes even beyond that. There's precedence for this. And the first precedence is OPEC. OPEC stood up one day and said, 1973, we're cutting oil off. And then you go to the gas station the very next day, there's a long line, and you can't get gas. You get up there and they say, what's your plate number? You can only get gas if you're an odd number. The next day you can only get gas if you're an even number. And the next thing we know, OPEC is formed, and that's the petroleum cartel of the world. And now they're one of the wealthiest entities in the world. Africa's doing the same thing. They're saying now, with the push towards modern technologies, you have to have our minerals. So we now hold the winning hand. We now have Park Place and Boardwalk, and you'll now do what we tell you to do. The deal is on our terms. So basically the cheese has moved and it's in Africa.
Okay. Question.
Unless you got comments, that's go ahead.
Yeah. First, I want you to repeat the name of that book, The Economic
Hitman. The Economic Hitman by Perkins.
I'm going to put that in the description box because I think that's really important. You know, anytime we can read and educate ourselves even more about things. So you're talking about European, British, whatever, you know, wherever they came from in the European area, they're exploring throughout the world, and they realize that Africa is pretty much a gold mine, and no pun intended, but, you know, they have all these resources and natural today that we know, you know, a lot of these things are actually, like you said, needed for technology, but back then they just had great value. So they rape and pillage. They take over and of course there was, you know, human resources too, right? That was all part of it as well, you know, the slave trade and everything like that, where humans were used as a commodity as well. And what tell me a little bit about how this sort of illumination, like how is Africa realizing this? When did this start to happen? When did they start to sort of wake up, if you will? Because, growing up in the 70s and the 80s, we always heard, making collections for Africa and those awful videos that we would see of starving children and just such um, awful visuals of what that land. And I think most people, myself included as a kid, obviously, you just accept, right? That oh, they're poor, but the question is why? Why are they poor? I mean, it was always sort of when I was learning about this, it was just, and of course I went to parochial school. So, we were always trying, there was always some kind of, trying to help others and that kind of a mentality that was going on. But I guess in my mind as a kid, it was like, I never really asked why. It was just like you just accepted, like, oh, these people are poor and they're starving. And maybe I thought on some level they just didn't have resources so that they could grow food. But it seems to me that that is really the number one question that maybe a lot of people never even thought about. It was just accepted as a fact. It's a poor continent.
Well, get ready to have your head exploded. Charity is slavery. What does the Bible say? Give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach a man a fish, you feed him for life. Now, for those who don't follow me, I need to give you a little background. I died in 68, went to heaven. God showed me everything that was going to happen from then till now, and he gave me an incredible, almost near photographic memory. So I'm going to take you back even further than Africa. I want to take you back to the colonial empire, and I'm going to spin it for you real fast. Crown Jewel was originally India, and they went to India and they wanted the gold, they wanted all the silk and the spices and everything. So they did the same thing. They put their troops in there, they trained them, and basically they kept India in slavery and in poverty. That's what they did there. Then they came to America, and we had to fight the Revolutionary War to get out from under those chains and slavery. And guess what? We're the model for what Africa's doing today. Because one day we woke up, and this ties to Mr. Donald J. Trump, and we said, no more. We're not going to be kept in invisible chains of slavery. What we're going to do is we're going to put tariffs on Britain and make it so that the American people cannot buy their goods. It'll be too expensive. And then what are we going to do? We're going to follow a simple three-step strategy. We're going to build a railroad across our nation so we can get access to our own resources instead of them going to Britain. We are going to make it too expensive to buy our goods. So necessity is the mother of invention. So that made us have to make factories, just what they're doing in Africa. And all of a sudden, we invented the Industrial Revolution. And unlike our slave masters, we shared it with the world. Europe was prospering. The whole world was prospering. I won't get into the details, but that's what they did to us. And then the nation that was treated the worst of all was Africa. And it wasn't because, I mean, they paint you a picture. They're savages. They're uneducable. Their IQs are inferior. None of that. They have melanoma in their skin, which makes their skin dark. Otherwise, their brains are as smart or smarter than ours. They're God's creation. God didn't make them inferior in any way whatsoever.
He didn't make any
But
humans inferior to others. We're all we're all made in his image, and we look different, and we should celebrate that, as opposed to look at it as negatives, right?
Yeah. We're all God's children. So now we're coming to the time where one by one, each nation seizes this opportunity to get control. For us, it was the building of the Continental Railroad. You go over to the OPEC nations, desert, poverty, no water, and then they got liquid gold.
Mm-hmm.
And they played that trump card, and they said, "You need us, world." And so they dictated the terms. And the next thing you know, we helped them modernize. We gave them security. And basically now the OPEC nations are ostensibly, possibly the wealthiest nations in the world, right?
Right.
Well, now it's Africa's time because now it's not oil, because the dependency on oil is declining because of the energy inventions that are coming out. But to have the technological revolution we're having, where we have AI, where we have Bitcoin, which consumes massive amounts of electricity, quantum computers that consumes even more electricity, we're in a period where we have to have energy in order to be able to develop the future. Well, guess what? That energy requires rare earths. And guess where the place on the earth is, that there's probably more rare earth than anywhere. Africa. So now Africa is seizing just the opportunity that America seized, and that India seized, and that when they said basically we're going to be free, and they rallied around Gandhi and said we're going to boycott your economic system, Britain folded. So now it's Africa's turn. It's just a story that's been evolving for 300 years, and they have managed over the last 100 years to get enough resources to start modernizing. So if we get into the slide presentation, we're going to see exactly what they're doing and why we're not going to stop it. It's absolutely a runaway train that cannot be stopped. So let's dig into it.
So I want to flip to the slides, but I have one question just historically, because you really have a handle on the history. So the Europeans basically went in initially, so to speak, into Africa, the exploitation. And then you mentioned that China. So what would you say the timeline was where, China became kind of picked up where, or joined in with where the Europeans were in exploiting Africa?
1973. Oh, no, actually, that's probably not the date. Whatever the date is that Carter was elected. Here's what it is. I need to make a caveat statement for everybody out there. If you try to think of geopolitical events in terms of a nation, China, America, India, Africa, you cannot grasp what's going on. So, but bottom line is, he who controls the money controls the world. The Europeans controlled the money and have controlled it for over 300 years. They became the global shadow elite. And because they control the money, meaning no nation in the world is possibly Russia has a sovereign currency. So they're not sovereign. They're controlled by the global financial elite who control the global monetary system. So when we think of this and try to unravel, our heads a pop if we don't understand that they just pick a nation and say, we're going to use you for whatever purpose. So what happened is, with the question that you're asking, which I think I just forgot.
It was just the kind of, I don't want to say passing the baton, but where China started.
Okay, yeah. So basically what happened, they decided we've let America get too strong, and they're a democracy, and that doesn't fit our image of trying to have a global dictatorship. So we're going to cede power to China, and it is going to become a new economic system that's never existed before, a super capitalist communist economy. So it will have the technology of capitalism, but the control of communism. And so the open trade, it was supposed to be Nixon, but he got booted out, if you remember, a little scandal. So it fell to Carter. And all of a sudden, all of the financial corporations of the world started sending money to China, and they started letting them have our technology. You want to build a factory in China? You got to give us your intellectual product. And so basically that was it. All the money started going to China. All the intellectual product started going to China, and China was the factory of the world. And how do we get money? We have natural resources, manufacturing, trade becomes money, and basically that's the control. So America was used to seed China with everything it needed to, on behalf of the global financial elite, be the new ruling power of the world. But it's falling apart. We've done shows, and China is absolutely collapsing. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it does. It does. So, all right. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get these slides up, and then I'm going to leave it to you to tell me which ones that we're going to use.
We're going to try to buzz through them because I want to leave time for you to ask your questions, because I know you have a probing mind.
Well, if you don't mind, I'll kind of ask my questions, as we go, if that's okay, just to kind of keep the conversation.
We can just skip this one. All it says is Africa is a rising giant, and I would add nothing's going to stop it. Let's go to the next one. That's just, I like art. That's just a pretty picture that says, you got two slides up at one time. You're halfway between one and the other.
Oh, yeah. Sorry about that.
Okay. So that's what we think of. We think of this desolate land. I got a news for you. They got cities more modern than we've got, but they also have a lot of land that hasn't got infrastructure that is just like the picture you see. Let's go to the next slide. And now we're going to get into some revealing a little bit about how America is used by the global financial elite to continue what was described by the economic hitman in his book. So here's what's happening. This is an exchange that's happening at the House on Services Committee, where General Langley is brought in. And for those who don't know who that gentleman below is, it's Matt Gaetz, and he's asking him some questions. And you'll never believe this. Seems that this happens pretty frequently. The answer is, well, I don't know. I couldn't say. I don't have that information. On and on it goes. And so Matt Gates finally says, would you pop up this slide? And what we see here is he says, General, is it true that you are over Africa and you sit and you bring Africans to America and train them and then send them back to Africa? Yes, that's true. Do you recognize these three men in this picture? No, I do not. Well, they were trained by your forces. And did you know that they all were trained by you, sent back to Africa, and then were subsequently involved in military coups in Africa? Can you say hegemony? That's it. That's how it works. That's how the French did it. That's how we do it. That's how they did it in India. There's your strategy for how they keep these nations in poverty. Let's go on to the next one and chime in with questions anytime, any place you want. Now, I got a question for your audience. You can answer on your behalf if you want, but I personally don't think Trump is an idiot. I think he's pretty close to being a genius, and I think that he is, just like his book says, he's the tantamount best negotiator in the whole world, art of the deal. So for me, it's impossible to think
100%
that the man who is forcing all of the industrialized nations of the world to come to heel is messing up Africa as badly as he seems to be messing it up. I think what's happening is just like the last 4 years was to drip, drip, drip and give us information. What he's doing over there right now is to open our eyes on the hegemony in Africa. That's my opinion. You may think that these are really the deals that he laid on the table. I'm not going to get into what he actually offered. I'm going to get into what I think he put into the deal to expose the absurdity of what was happening. So what we're going to do is go down through 7 or 8 of the 13 deals that he did. Let's do his record. Win, 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 win. You're going to be tired of winning. And then he goes to Africa, and 13 times in a row, they say, get out, go away. Absurd. All you're offering is charity with chains attached. Nope, I don't think he's that dumb. I think this is a strategy to drip the truth to us. So he goes in there and he says, if you want to deal with us, you got to cut ties with China. You got to hand over your strategic resources. You got to toe the line on American policy. Well, that sounds like some pretty heavy change to me. I mean, my neck is getting tired. And then he goes down and we go through the individual deals. Now, do you think most of your audience knows what BRICS is, or do I need to elaborate on it?
Just give a little overview for newcomers. Most of Mel's audience knows.
Okay,
but
none of the nations of the world want to be controlled anymore. They want to have sovereignty. So they don't want to be controlled by the dollar, which is what relates to BRICS here, because we leverage our dollar as the world's reserve currency by being able to put sanctions on nations if they don't toe the line on American policy. So a whole group of nations, that stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, and many, many more, have gotten together and said, we're going to conduct
I think it's
international
like
trade.
200, isn't it? Are we up to like 180 countries, and then there's other I guess they're not countries, maybe they're territories that's already kind of signed up or requested to be part of BRICS?
I don't know that number. It changes every day. There's I think 196 nations in the world, but it's not as powerful as you think. Basically, the dollar is still the preferred currency. So what Trump is trying to do, we've done this in other shows. I'm digressing a little bit here. He knows that we're not going to come out of this reset that's been planned and being executed and remain the sole world's reserve currency. Not going to happen. His strategy is to use Bitcoin as a reserve of value, to use stable coins, to back it by gold, and to create a situation where when we come out of this, instead of 100% of all the trade in the world be conducted in dollars, which it isn't. Even now, he wants to maintain 61% of all international trade conducted in dollars, so he can still control the world through leverage of our money. But here's what's happening. The world is saying, we do not want to be controlled by America or by China. China controls by controlling trade, which means they can control the necessities of life and put us in absolute slavery. We control by controlling the money. So basically, he says to BRICS, South Africa, if you want to do a deal with us, you got to get out of BRICS. And they say, you know where you can go. And that was the end of that negotiation. And then he goes to Kenya and he says, we want to control your ports. Well, remember, what they did all along is they kept you from having infrastructure. Ports are one of the most important infrastructure in the world. So Kenya said, goodbye, get out of here. Then they go to Ghana and they wanted to basically veto power over Chinese projects. Well, you can't tell me who I can do business with. You can leave, exit stage right. And then you go to Tanzania. This one is the most ridiculous of all. Anybody ever heard of Bill Gates? Anybody ever heard that he mingled in Africa for a while?
Oh,
Anybody
yeah.
ever heard that he sent his polio vaccines in there? And a lot
Horrible.
of people were killed, and some of the most horrendous birth deformations I've ever seen in my life were caused by that.
Yeah.
So he comes in and says, on behalf of the pharmaceutical companies to Tanzania, we want to do pharmaceutical trials and with minimal oversight. They said, you got to be crazy. Trump is not this stupid. Come on, folks. Let's go on down. We'll go through just a couple of more, and then maybe I'll pause and let you see if you want to take me in another direction. So then we go to Senegal. And this one, I said, I think I almost spit my coffee out of my mouth when I read this. We want to give you a democracy package so that you can understand to implement democracy. And we want to clean your courts up, and we want to clean your election process up. This coming from the country that has lost control of all of that? Give me a break. And then we go down to Egypt. And Egypt's been one of our best allies, other than Israel. We've depended on them for military support more than any other nation. Now, how many people would say that Africa is across the board a Christian nation? I hope none of you.
Nobody, right?
But there is a secret. It has the largest it actually has probably the largest Christian community in the world. But it's, as a nation, as a group of nations, it's Muslim.
Right.
So here's what they're saying that they want to do in Egypt to our good buddies. We want you, the president of Egypt, to go to your people and make a public announcement that you support Israel's annexation of the West Bank. Get out of here.
Right.
They'd chase him out of office so fast as his head would swim. I mean, come on, folks. These are ridiculous. They're absurd. And then we go, this one's complicated. Then we go to the Democratic Republic of Congo, which is, I think, probably the largest country in Africa, and they have lots of resources. Well, there's this little bitty nation on the side of it, about 1/10 the size, Rwanda, and all of a sudden, gee whiz, go figure, they got a massive rebel force armed to the teeth, and they attack the Congo, and they take over the second largest city in no time flat, 2 million, and they're going to march on the capital. And then we find out, God says there's no secrets anywhere, that I'm not going to say who, but that rebel force was funded with money from somewhere, and there was a deal on the table. We want you to sell us your natural resources. Well, guess what? They didn't have them, but the Congo did. So they funded them so that they would invade the Congo. Sound familiar? Order out of chaos. And then the people who funded the revolt would have access to those minerals. That's what they've been doing to Africa all along. Have you ever wondered why there's always some kind of rebel activity happening in Africa? Because anytime they lose control over the mining rights, they just make a nice little rebel uprising, and then they create chaos, and next thing you know, they've got their minds back. So that's what happened. So now let's go on down, and we'll see. Actually, I thought.
So these things that you've just gone through, these potential proposed deals, right?
Mm-hmm.
These were proposed by President Trump.
Yes. And 13 countries says, get out of here.
Okay, so I just wonder if we could just slightly go down that road for 1 second, because, people who don't follow and do research like we do and kind of understand that there's games being played and, chess moves being made in order to move us into wherever we're meant to go to better the world and, better our country and humanity. Tell me what you think the thinking is for him, because you have those people that don't understand, or just the left, right? The mainstream media watching people, and they're looking at Trump, and this is where you get these people that come out and then they just go off on Trump, right? He's a dictator and he's this and he's that. So just give a little insight. Why would this man do that? Why is he doing that?
Well, there's no absolute answer. I'm not a mind reader, but I can give you a little bit of insight. So I already gave you one inkling, and that is to do what was done over the last 4 years. He just tweeted out the most absurd thing you can imagine the other day. This will tell you, to give you an idea. He retweeted that Biden died in 2020, and that the man that was subsequently elected was not even Biden, and therefore the entire 4-year term of Biden is illegal and unconstitutional, and lots of people, when the truth comes rolling out, are going to be removed from office, and all the laws and everything that he passed are going to be removed. So what does he do? He comes, let's go back to tariffs, and he makes these backstick statements, 145% tariff. Well, when you're attacked every single solid day by the media, when they basically say everything bad about you, the man is a master negotiator, remember. So what he does is he says, I'm going to say and do something absolutely bombastic, and people are going to go bananas, and I'm going to reach out and get the microphone, and I'm going to make them talk about it. And when they talk about it, things are going to come out, and clarity is going to start to come. So that's what Trump does. Trump basically says, I got you. I drew you into my arena, and I'm going to control the narrative. That's what he's doing here. It looks absurd. 145% tariff. All these deals, you got to stand up and say, we back the West Bank. Oh, no. It's to draw your attention to Africa. That's where we're going right now. Now, maybe there's another possibility. Trump is a man, and Trump has the best intentions for America, but there's still some very powerful forces up there jiggling strings, and maybe he doesn't have full control now. So, but I think in the final analysis, no matter what Trump is trying to do, this is the outcome. I'll just jump to the end.
Yeah.
Africa has gotten.
And we saw that, we saw that very plainly, although people didn't realize they were seeing that when we had, when we were in the midst of the whole COVID thing. And who did he push out front and center? Somebody that most people never even heard of, right? A doctor whose last name starts with an F. And, he was pushed him out front and center, and everybody saw. And so that is his strategy, because people have to get focused on things so that then you can take the next steps to actually reveal what's really going on. So, it gives so much admiration to this man, because he really doesn't care what people think of him. He doesn't care about how awfully he's, hated by some, and horrible things that are said about him and his family, because he's just so laser focused on what it is that he wants to do to make the changes that are all going in the direction of freedom, whether it's our country or it's Africa or it's anywhere else. And for that alone, he is just a genius. Okay, so I'm going to go down to the next slide. Okay.
Now, there's a dual purpose to this.
Okay.
So we're going to go into what's obvious, and then later I'm going to save, but we're going to go into what's less obvious. So here we go. This is what he's doing with tariffs. He's basically saying, we want you to be loyal trading partners. Well, how's he going to get that loyalty? Through leveraging the dollar and causing tariffs to say, you're going to support America. You're going to be our loyal trading partners. Sovereign borders. So what's behind a lot of these tariffs? We want sovereignty. Canada, get the act together. Stop allowing fentanyl to come in. Same thing to Mexico. And then he's looking at, what's he do next? He says, hey, there's 34 cartels around the world, all in most of them in Mexico, Central America, and South America. They're all terrorists, and we now have the ability to go in and take them out, just like we have done in the Middle East. So the leverage of the tariffs is to get something else that he wants, that he'll never get unless he makes these countries painfully experience an economic situation that they'd rather avoid. And so then you go down and you get to reciprocal trade. That's what we're doing, that we need to do to stop the bleed. When we sent the Carter people over to open up trade with China, we were 200 years old. We had you ready for this? I mean, we had a staggering debt, $600 billion, not even $1 trillion. And now it's almost $38 trillion. because our trade was upside down. We entered into NAFTA, and every deal we did under NAFTA caused us to lose money and bleed. So all he's trying to do is not revenge. We just want to have kind of a fair trading platform. And then energy independence. So basically, that's where the whole move is coming. We are all going to have something that we have had forever. I just did a show yesterday that had a 20-second clip that was coming from a spokesman from the White House. Are you ready for this? Here's what he said. We have and have had for well over 100 years anti-gravity devices, and we could bend time, and we have super efficient energy platforms. And now it's not going to be held back. It's going to be given to us as quickly as they can, because we've evolved into a situation where China economically is falling. Their factories are closing. There's 100 million person protest that's been going on, but they're reserving one hope for the future. They have gotten our technology, because whenever anybody went over there, they had to give their intellectual rights to them, right? So they're hoping China's last straw that they're grasping at is they can get technological advantage and still maintain their dream of controlling the world. I'm going to be doing several shows on that. So
Yeah.
basically, go ahead.
What I was going to say is, if you, and we talk about this a lot, when we do the forecast on Mondays, which I know we want to always have you on, but I think it conflicts with something you're doing. So maybe
I've got two standing shows on Wednesdays that I committed to.
Okay, so Mondays maybe we
I
can
mean on Mondays. I'm
on
sorry.
Mondays.
It's on
Okay.
Mondays. Yes.
Okay. So in any case, one of the things that we've, been talking about for a long time, Mel, of course, we are talking always about the whole what is, Nassar and Jassara, and then we see all these little pieces that are all indicative of what's happening. And I think, like the point you were just saying when you talk about these technologies, right? We know that part of that is the unveiling of what 6,000 whatever it is different
Patents.
patents.
The Chevron decision. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and all these things and so I know the clip you're talking about because I think we actually might have played it on our forecast, and
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing what was said. Now you have to wonder how many people really paying attention, but even if they were paying attention, do they really understand the impact of what, because it sounds, if you're not really aware of what's going on, you're not following a lot of things, and you haven't gone down these rabbit holes, you think it just sounds like absurd, or you just don't pay attention to it. But what that is really implying is an entire shift in how we live, right? I mean, you introduced just a few of those, especially the ones they were talking about with the anti-gravity, and that changes our whole lives. So I think, we're seeing, no one's going to come out and say, oh, by the way, we have all these like these things under Nassar and Jassar, and tomorrow, like, we're going to see everything happen. It's just these little pieces, that we just, if your eyes are open and you're aware, you're realizing that when we look back maybe 6 months, a year from now, you got this big long list
Mm-hmm.
that is all going. So I just, I just want to say that because it seems like every podcast I'm doing, every interview I'm doing, there's always some tie back that we see the reflection of what's really happening, when it comes to that. And that clip you mentioned is one of it. So do you want me to put the slides back again to continue?
No, actually, what I'm going to do is we may not even finish this presentation because we're going everywhere. I'm
Yeah.
going to interject into what you said. So energy is the new currency.
Yeah.
Energy is so key. Now, I want to give you an idea of what that really means. So people are squawking, I'm going to have to pay more for Chinese made goods. Well, forget it. Here's what's really going to happen. We're going to get energy, abundant energy. I want to walk you through what it means. So Trump is doing what over on the other side? He said, we're going to get out from under this. Money and energy are going to tie together here. We're going to get out from under the central banking system.
Yeah.
The Fed's going to go away, and we're going to go to a decentralized banking system based on tariffs, right? And already some states are saying we're getting rid of property taxes, and we're eventually going to get out from under the federal tax. So, folks, that's about 35% of the money that you make now that's taken from you every year that's going to be put back in your pocket. But now let's look at the real money. Here it goes. It's energy. So I want you to think about, you're looking at the globe from space and you're watching things moving around. And here's what happens. There's this big dozer in a pit and it picks up 10 tons of ore with a big, huge piece of equipment run by diesel, drops it into a giant truck run by diesel, drives it to a smelt run by coal, brings it up to 4,500 degrees, ships it around the entire world on ships run by diesel, and takes it to manufacturing plants that turn it into finished goods all over the world, then ships those goods to every place. There's no one factory that builds everything. Those factories have maybe 150 parts that are sent from all over the world, all energy being consumed using fossil fuels. And then they finally get to their destinations and billions of people drive their cars to buy them and then they take them home, etc. You know what happened? Here's what happened. If you take the fossil fuel out of the cost of all of those goods, that is absolutely the primary cost of every good you buy. And so the cost, the more complicated the supply chain is, the more the price will go down. So we already saved 35%, got it in our pockets, and we're happy campers. Now we're going to get 50 or 60% more.
Yeah.
Because that's how much energy.
Yeah, and just think about your home. I mean, think about the costs. I mean, I watch my energy, you know, in the winter you put, if depending on where you live, you're putting on heat, right? So there's that. And then, okay, so maybe you have like a month where you don't have heat or you don't have air, but then all of a sudden then you're moving into the warmer weather and you're putting on air and the bills just skyrocket. I mean, I think I have 1 month in the whole year that's like a reasonable, you know, small amount, you know, maybe a double-digit amount. The rest of the time, you know, you're talking 3 digits and it could go really high. And just that alone, right now, we're talking on a global scale, of course, with energy.
But let's look at it in an aggregate. We got no property tax. We've got no federal income tax. The cost of all goods is going to drop by 50% or more. So all of a sudden you're flush with cash. But now we're not done. You mentioned houses. I sold real estate for 12 years and eventually had my own brokerage firm. So I know a little bit about what I'm talking about. Here's what happened. Since 2020, that magic date, houses have gone up by probably 100%. A $200,000 house probably sells for $400,000. So millions of people out there cannot afford to buy a house.
Right.
They can't afford it. So let's look at that and add that, and you're going to see the world is changing in a way that's going to liberate everybody. So what we're really talking about is the value of the house didn't go up. The value of the dollar went down.
Yeah, right.
The dollar is now worth about 3 cents. So now, as we go through this metamorphosis of all the things that I just explained, the dollar is going to go back up to where it's worth $1. And so if the dollar has had a 90% decline in value, what's going to happen is, yes, we're going to look like we have a crash, but the value of the dollar is going to go up. And all of a sudden, that house that cost $400,000 now might cost $40,000.
Wow.
So we've just completed an economic metamorphosis. The caterpillar has come out of the cocoon and he's a butterfly and he eats chains of slavery and mankind has just been set free. That's what that energy dot on that screen represents. And he's about building America. Well, Africa's about building Africa. And buy American, Africa's about buying African. And built in America, Africa's about built in Africa. And reducing waste. Well, think of Doge. Think of the man that they're now making the new scapegoat. And reducing the size of government. Think of Doge, the man that they're burning his car dealerships down. Power back to the state and local government. Bam. First thing he did is came in and he said, we're getting rid of the Department of Education and we're getting rid of, think Africa, we're getting out of U.S. aid, which was part of what Perkins was talking about in his book, The Economic Hitman. We loan you money, but the money has chains of slavery. The whole cycle is breaking. So this is what Trump says we want in our deals. This is what's behind his tariff program. You can't just use the word tariff. You have to use each and every one of these words. And then I'm going to add something to it. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. And I'm going to save that until we get to the end.
Okay. And, you know, when you talk about US aid, I mean, we won't go down that whole line, but, you know, it's so much more than just the idea of keeping these countries in chains. It's also just how was the money ever getting? It was just big money laundering system that they were using anyway. So across the board, all this corruption is being revealed. And when you talk about Doge, right? That's another, we affectionately call it the Department of Jasara, on our show, because right, everything that they're doing and all the monies that's coming back, because, I think for the average person, it's too much to comprehend. They don't understand really where we were. They don't understand where we are. So it's going to be very difficult for them to understand where we're going. So it has to be presented in a way that's kind of simplistic and kind of just makes it seem obvious, right? Oh, we found, $100 billion here. That's why we could do this. But as you and I know, it's all these other factors that are feeding the money back to us and allowing, hopefully when all is said and done and these things are implemented with more finality, like you said, the value of the dollar is going to go up, and then the cost of all these other things is going to go down. So I always like to say that, because I'm hopeful that when we do these podcasts, that people share them, and so a lot of times when they're being shared, they might be being shared with someone who's a little new to this, and so I'd like to preface that. If we don't want to just start in the middle. We want to kind of give them a little bit of an understanding of where all this stuff is actually
Well, let
originating.
me see if I can summarize what you walked us into.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
basically, here it is. So basically, what happens is, instead of our hard-earned money going to a global financial elite who enslave us, what's happening is we're breaking those invisible chains, and now we're no longer paying federal income tax. We're no longer paying personal property tax. We're now going to go back to where we started, where America was run on a single sales tax, because the money is no longer going to the financial elite to enslave us. The money is going to make an efficient government that allows us to have goods and services at a fraction of what we pay now, putting money in our pocket, freeing us, so that here's where it comes home. You as a mother can stay home with your kids, or your husband, whatever, one person working. And you can, in Finland, they have job sharing, where a 40-hour job is shared by two people. We're going to get to the point with energy and with technology where most of us will work 20 hours a week, and we'll have time to have lives and have spiritual development and so forth. So the chains are being ripped off of our necks. That's what's happening. So let's speed this up a little bit. Let's go and let's look at what Africa is doing and why they cannot be stopped.
Let's do that.
Right.
Good. I'm
Go
going
to the next slide.
Okay, so we're going to get those
So
back up, and let me get that. You're going to tell me we were just on this one, so we're going to go to Africa's modernizing on its own.
All right. So basically, you guys need to go out and do this. I've done shows on it. I'll be doing more. I'm talking a lot about energy. I've been talking about it for years. Africa has been a net consumer of automobiles. They ship their copper, they ship their lithium, they ship their iron to other nations, and they make pennies on the dollar for it. And then it's come back and they buy a car, and the markup is 10 times. So basically, Maxwell Chickabuto has just invented a revolutionary automobile that doesn't need to be charged. It doesn't need gasoline. It doesn't need to be plugged in. It basically is getting energy from space, and it charges batteries with trickle charging, so that it can drive. As it drives, it perpetually charges those batteries. And Elon Musk went down there and visited and came back and said it works. So they have now introduced their own line of EVs to compete against Japan and Germany and the United States. And in every category, Africa is saying we're no longer consumers, we're going to be competitors. And energy, there's a solar field. They're doing a deal with Russia for a nuclear power plant, and they're modernizing, and they're taking Chickabuto's generator out into the outback, and they're basically being able to bring, without a grid, energy to the millions of people, 600 million people in Africa that have no energy. They're building highways. That's the tantamount comparison to what we built when we built our railroad. And they're building highways all the way to the ocean so they can get access to trade around the world. They just built a new airport, and they've got modern planes. I just got from a travel agency, $1,500 to go to Burkina Faso. That's where all this is happening. That's the nation that's rallying Africa. And they've got there's an amazing university hospital. And now they're doing exactly what America, just follow history repeats itself. They're saying we have to be self-sufficient. So what are they doing? They're no longer sitting there cotton around. They're building textile plants. They're no longer letting their tomatoes rot on the vines because they can't ship them out fast enough. They've got a tomato processing plant. They're no longer having people starve because they have no water and they have subsistence farming. They are training people in their university in the most modern agricultural technologies there are. They're providing them tractors and drones and and they're going to be basically what? One of the biggest food baskets in the world. They're giving them water, they're giving them tools, they're giving them education. They're rising and they've risen to a point that nobody is going to stop them. They're building their own concrete. Why do they need that? For the roads. So when China went through this massive growth, they poured more concrete in 10 years than we poured in 100 years. Well, Africa is going to need to pour concrete. And then what did they do to get what BRICS was doing? They said, all you guys who are controlling our mines, you're out. We're nationalizing them, and we're gonna mine our own ore, and we're gonna smelt it. And they got a whole bunch of nations together and said, let's pool our gold and have our own sovereign currency. And that's what they did. And basically, all of that is what America did. And then they did one other last thing. We said, farming, and after 34 years of imposing the tariffs on Britain, we made an announcement at our 100th-year anniversary. America today, the youngest nation in the world, is the most prosperous nation, and we are that because we did this. We controlled agriculture, we controlled mining, and we controlled manufacturing. Those three things are what make a nation dominant. That is exactly what Africa is doing. The ball is out, and nobody is going to put it back. Basically, I don't care who tries. Africa is not going to be dominated anymore. Nigeria, they're one of the biggest oil-producing countries in Africa. And what they've been doing forever is just, here, take our crude, take it, and go refine it. And now they're saying, we're refining it. They just opened one of the biggest, most modern refineries in the entire world, and now they're shipping out refined oil. That's happening all across Africa. And Africa is saying in a united voice, which is what we need to do. We are Africans. We are proud of it. We stand together arm in arm, and you will not tell us what to do. You want what we have. It will be on an equitable basis, period. This is not going to be stopped under any consideration in any way. Questions or comments before we go on?
No, my only comment is what we're seeing here on this slide. Is this in one particular country, or this is the composite of what's happening in all the countries?
All of this is in Burkina Faso.
Burkina Faso.
Let me give you some background. Burkina Faso is not the biggest nation in Africa. It's got a reasonable amount of resources, but hey, guess what? We've got two guys, matter of fact, that are representing the spear for us. And that's Elon Musk and Donald Trump, right? India had a guy, it was Gandhi. He was a lawyer and a spiritual leader, and he basically rallied the people around, and they stood up and they had patriotism. They said, we're going to boycott England, and they got the freedom. This man, let's go on down to the next slide, and I'll answer your question.
Sure.
Go one more. We had that one. Go one more.
Okay.
All right, stop right there.
Okay.
That man is the president of Burkina Faso, Ibrahim Traoré. He did something. To me, he is the Africa's version of Donald Trump, of Elon Musk, and of Gandhi, and of Dr. Martin Luther King, all rolled up in one. He's the youngest president in the whole world, 36 years old. And he basically said
How old is he?
36.
Wow.
He said to all of the superpowers of the world, here it is. You'll do business on our terms, and won't do business at all. All of you guys, I'm nationalizing all of our minerals, all of our mines. Get the heck out of here. And when you come back, you'll do business on our terms. And Africa stood back and said, oh my God, somebody stood up to the West, to the hegemony, and they're rallying around this man. And they're basically, you go into other nations, and you see buses with this picture on them, and Africa's talking about one day we will be the United States of Africa, and maybe Tory will be the president of Africa, and we will be as strong and as powerful as any other nation in the world. We will rival China, we will rival Russia, we will rival America, because we have the quintessentials that are necessary for the technological age that is unstoppable at this point in time. This is the man that's rallying Africa, and nation after nation is following him. That's why a whole bunch of nations got together, pooled their gold, and got their own currency. That's why Nigeria is now not shipping out crude, but shipping out refined oil. That's why every nation in the world is saying, out, you're out. Come back when you'll abide by our terms and you won't treat us like slaves. Africa is rising, and it has reached a point where it is unstoppable. And the models are what America did, what India did, and what OPEC did. They each reached a point in time where they had something that the world absolutely had to have, and they leveraged it. And this man is the rallying point for that, for all of the people in Africa to stand up. And God's hand is in this. It's no mistake that Africa, more than any other nation in the world, is not religious, but spiritual. They believe in signs, wonders, and miracles, period. Shall we go on?
Yes. And one thing, we're talking here about this gentleman and what he's done. So and that's where I always like to get a little conspiracy. So we've got Donald Trump, who is saying these ridiculous things, like on the outside, but it makes you wonder, how much is he doing on the inside? Because, he is a man who believes in that every country should put itself first, right? He said that, and that, so it makes you wonder, where these people are finding the spiritual and emotional strength, and looking at the practicality of what their country has and how they can leverage it. It begs the question whether or not behind the scenes, what is our beloved president doing to also help empower these people? That's what I would be thinking and believing, just knowing what his worldview is, so to speak.
I hope that Donald Trump is behind these people, but we don't know who's pulling the strings. We don't know what power he has. Basically, the dominoes are still in play. The chessboard's still being moving. So I'm going to take Donald Trump out of the equation, and I'm going to say this. No man's going to control this. God's controlling that chessboard. And when it's all said and done, Africa is going to stand tall and proud and say, we bow to no nation. I believe that eventually, I hope Trump is on our side. There's a couple of slides that maybe will help answer this better. So let's go on. Let's go to the next slide. This one, folks, get your cameras out. Do me a favor. Take a picture of that. This is the future. This is the future that God has planned for mankind. Here it is. This is what Africa is saying. This is what God is going to implement. Equity-based deals. Now, not everybody has been in the business world like I have. Maybe don't know what equity means. It means that when you do a deal, you retain ownership. And so Africa is now saying, every deal we do will not be a charity. Every deal will be an equity deal, and we will own 51%, meaning we have controlling interest, period. If you can't abide by that, don't even knock on our door. We're not going to talk to you. And then the next thing it says, processing of minerals. We're not going to give you any minerals and ship them to your country raw. We're going to mine, we're going to produce it, and we're going to ship you out finished copper, finished steel, finished oil, period. That's where the money's at. And what we're going to be a competitor, just like Europe is a competitor, America's a competitor, China's a competitor, Russia's a competitor. We're going to be a competitor. And then assistance to develop infrastructure. So they're not trying to be punitive, but they're basically saying, well, you've suppressed us forever. So maybe we work something into our deal that says, we think you need to help us develop our infrastructure because you've kept us from developing it for decades and decades and decades. So that's figured into the equation. And then the oil companies came in and the gold mines came in, and they pillaged Africa and left it polluted. And so they're saying, you want to mine our gold, you want to mine our oil, whatever, You will have ecological responsibility to clean up after yourself, or you will not come into this nation. We are not going to be another China where they have 20% of the world's population, 6% of the water, and 86% of what little water they have is so polluted it's unfit for human habitation. That will not happen in Africa. Africa is going to be ecologically responsible. And then they go on down and they say security assistance, no strings. Basically, you want to come in and help us? No strings of any sort. That's the deal that Africa has. Look back at what Trump said and that he wanted. Every nation in the world is demanding that, and Africa is demanding this. And the nations who go in and do deals with Africa from this day forward, here's the deal. You want to knock on our door, so here's what happened. Country after country after country was kicked out. Mines, one after another, were nationalized. And now guess what's happening? The leaders of those companies are coming back with their hat in their hand and saying, Uncle, we give up. We'll take your deal. You're not going to stop Africa from rising. God has ordained this, and he is ordaining that every nation in the world will open their eyes and understand that we are God's children. We were all the same in his eyes, and that he is going to usher in a period of time right now where we learn this one simple thing: to harm another is to harm ourselves. We are going to be held accountable for being the stewards of mankind, and Africa is going to lead the way. Let's go on down. Unless you got any comments. So here's Tori. I encourage you to find out about this man. You look like you're going to say something, so please chime in.
I'm sorry, I had my thing muted because the landscapers decided to come late. So hopefully you didn't interfere with what you were saying. Yeah, no, I think this man is incredible, and I'm so grateful that you're telling us about him, because he sounds like somebody that we should educate ourselves about and understand, like, what he's doing and the pride that he's bringing to this nation, in addition to the empowerment.
Let me ask you a question. Have the elite stood against Trump? Yeah. Have they tried to kill him? Yeah. So the measure of whether a man is kind of doing something for God seems to me that the more they attack him, the more he's doing what God wants.
Oh, yeah.
So let's look at this man. Guess what? There have been more assassination attempts against him than any other human being on the planet. I think the number is currently 28. It might be 18. I can't remember. But anyway, they've tried to kill him more times than you. It's more lives than cat. So because he's anointed to lead Africa into a new future. The man is just unbelievable. Go do some research. You'll find out that he is, in my mind, the embodiment of the four men that I mentioned before. Let's go on down, and I want to read his quote. He's not coming at, no, get back up, I'm sorry. He's not coming at this like some rash, vengeful person. This is what he says. Together we will build a new economic system. That's for the whole world, not just for Africa. One that is founded on fairness and equality and cooperation. It is time for Africa to define its own values. And those values should be the values for the whole world. We need to stand in unity. One world under God, indivisible, with justice and liberty for all. Not one nation, one world. We are all God's children. He's not coming at this with revenge. He's coming at it saying we're all God's children. I'm not saying he's a Christian, but basically he's saying peace and prosperity depend on equality and equity. And let's go on down. And I think the next one is maybe the last slide before I break into talking about my book. So here we go. This is where we're at. This is where everything kind of culminates. The moment Africa stopped posturing and started listening. So the people in our government, Trump and Vance, have been slamming this man, whether it's to get the microphone or whether they mean it, I don't know. But basically, here's what happened. Every time somebody comes against Abraham, he comes out and does a broadcast. And he brings in a red folder and he lays it on the table. And it's full of intel. And he takes all the bombastic statements of all these people and he just cleans their clock with facts of what's been done to Africa. And so this is one of those occasions. And here's what happened. Vance is slandering Ibrahim Traoré, and a man named Michael Thomas, who was a former diplomat, defended Traoré. And so Traoré now, he's one of his broadcasts, and he's got his red folders, and he's giving the facts. And they invite Michael Thompson in, and as a private citizen, not as part of the government. And he gets up and he makes a few words. And here's what he said. Let's see if I can look at it on my screen where I can read it. America was part of a system. Well, maybe I should go back further. He invited former American diplomat Michael Thompson as a private citizen who apologized for America, saying America was part of a system that claimed to be peacekeepers, but were power keepers who spoke of democracy while propping up those which silenced it with strings thicker than chains. So here's what happened. A crisis meeting was called in Washington, and what do? Do we kill him? Do we slander him? Do we whatever? And supposedly Vance got the message. He saw what was happening. He saw it's not going to stop. And so he didn't fight it. What he did is he said, get a hold of that Michael Thomas. We're going to send him back to Burkina Faso as an envoy. And Traoré said, okay, the man who listened before, we'll listen to him, let him come in. And so basically, this is the beginning of the flip of that narrative, where I believe we're now going through the circle, we exposed, and now we're going to converse, and then we're going to partner. So these are my conclusions, and it's difficult to reach 100% correct conclusions in a sea of lies, but I think this is where we end up and we start to see the story unfold. You basically drip, 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 you expose, and then finally you come to the table, and now everybody is going to be forced to go back to that slide we had a minute ago. These are the 5 things that you will do if you will do business in Africa, or you will not do business in Africa. So when Trump went to Canada and Trump went to Mexico, he had a hand, and it probably had 4 aces and a joker. And he walked in and says, I gotcha. And now here, Burkina Faso, Abraham Traoré has a deck of cards, and he's got a royal flush. And he says, I don't care who you are, from what country you're from, how powerful you are. I got you. I got what you need. You will do business on a fair and equitable basis with us. And here are the terms. Read it. If you want to do a deal with us, this is the deal you'll sign. You'll do a deal at all. Africa is going to be a first world nation, and it's going to do it quick, because now we're coming into a period where we don't have to have a giant grid built where free energy or virtually free energy can be given to Africa like that. So with that, if you'll just pull up those next 2 slides, we're still looking for about $1,000 to get my second book out and get it into the school system. It's a book that's based on history. It's all the kind of details that I talk about in every podcast I do. And Trump opened the door, because the first thing he did is come in and get rid of the Federal Department of Education. So if anybody has seen this and hasn't donated, all we need is about $1,200 more, and we've got all the money to get this book out. And I've already managed to get enough money to get the process started. The book is due to come out on August the 15th or thereabouts. And let's go to the next one. So click on that QR code if you want to donate $1 or $10 or whatever. And I promise you, I thought I needed $13,500, but then when she actually got the manuscript, she said it's a little more complicated than I thought. So it's $14,000. We're 90% of the way there. Help me cross the finish line. Then let's click on that QR code if you want to donate. Go to the next slide. And this book is now ordained by God.
Before I go forward, give everybody a chance to just click on the QR code.
Yeah, please.
This way, this is an amazing effort that Larry is doing. We all can attest to what the school system is and has turned into, and we want to get this book into the school. So click on the QR code, and we will go to the next slide here.
Now I have 3 books. God gives me these things well in advance. So this book is out, and it is the equivalent of a 500-page history book that will put you to sleep. That's done in a couple hundred pages. That's the fastest read you'll ever see in your life. That's made so that you can use it as a resource book. So basically, this is the time when God needs to rally all of mankind around a focused objective. This is the time that people need to know to be empowered to stand up. So I encourage you to buy this book. It's available on Amazon. And I'm going to ask you a favor. You'll never believe what happened. I've got this publisher working on the second book. And there's a third book, by the way, that'll come out in about a year. It's done. I'm just waiting. It's all about what's been done to us to control us through the Bible. That's a jawbreaker. But anyway, here's what happened here. You'll never believe this. I'm sure it was an accident. But you know, all the publishers turned me away until a lady from Harrison House called me and said, "Stop trying." She said, "They're never going to publish you. So too much of the truth. I've got some money and I've got the skills. I'll publish your book." Well, now what's happening here is we're on this book. It's now out. And guess what? We now have a situation where the truth is out there. God told me 56 years ago, "I'll bring you out at the last minute and the truth will set the people free." We need an army of people who know the truth and who can stand up and can help, and it can help bring peace and prosperity to the world. This book is a guidebook for turning every nation in the world into a democracy and opening the eyes so that people turn to Christ and we can have a harvest of souls that we're intended to have. So with that, we have successfully concluded this, unless you have some comments in the end. I love doing shows with you because you just sit there, you think, and you probe me.
Yeah.
So comments on your part.
Well, once again, I have this up here. I want to put the slide up again. So anybody who has their phone, they can grab this QR code. Another wonderful book. So I'll leave that up first.
I got to interject. I forgot why I started to say that. So here's what I need your help with. Okay. Here's what happened. So the only place the book is on Amazon. And the publisher calls me and says, "Larry, I got to tell you something." She says, "I read your book, both of them. It's great." And I go on your website, nothing but 5-star reviews and Amazon. But there's a problem. You're not selling anywhere near the number of books you should be selling. Would you like to know why? And I said, "You bet your bippy I'd like to know why." She says, "Because something mysteriously happened. And this is a nonfiction book. They've got you listed as fiction. And so every time they go out and they want to know about the Green New Deal, they want to know about the greatest thing that's happening, you're invisible." So folks, I need you, we're trying to get that fixed right now, but I need you to do me a favor. If you've been following me, if you like what I do, if you've read this book, do me a favor. Go on your social media platform and tell your friends. Tell your friends, because until we can get this thing fixed, this book can't gain traction because they've parked me in a location where I don't care what you do to search, you're not going to find me. Unless you go in and type in the name of the book or my name, I'm invisible. And this book has to get it. When she told me that, I got to tell you what happened. She expected me to go ballistic and be upset, and I just laughed. And I said, "God's got the most amazing sense of humor, because he told me that when I came out, this book would be so hot that it had to be held until the end. It's like in a relay race. I'm going to give you the baton at the end, and you're going to cross the finish line. This book will open people's eyes." And because of that, he said, "I'm going to hold you in the cleft of the rock until the last second." So that's what he's done. He's waiting until the right moment. And the minute I found that out, 2 days later, somebody calls me who's been involved in cinematography and is really charges people a lot of money for help. And he says, "You've got to have a platform, and I'm going to help you get it. I'm going to help you go viral on the internet." So hold on. In the next month or two, he's going to give me some assistance, and we're going to get a meaningful platform. But in the meantime, please help me. Please get on your social media and promote this book, because it's invisible. Yeah. Sorry, but anyway, thank you.
Yeah, no, folks, Liberty Crusade, go on Amazon and find it. And, you know, I just...
or just go to larrybeller.com or just click that QR code.
Absolutely. And, you know, we've been working on a project, and we're trying to bring to the forefront even more, you know, what's been happening with censorship. So quite frankly, I'm sure this was all by design, why people can't find it. It doesn't surprise me. It's angering, but it doesn't surprise me because where there's truth, uh, and people don't know about it and what's really going on, it keeps us slaves even longer. So, okay, so grab that QR code, LarryBallard.com. And of course, if you're on Amazon, Liberty Crusade. Well, as always,
Lisa, you're a sweetheart.
yeah, we got to get the word out, right? That's why we do. That's why we have
Yeah.
these great podcasts together, educate people. Hopefully, if you enjoyed this, you'll please like and share it, folks, because we've got to spread this around. And Larry, till next time. I mean, you
Would you like to know what I'm working on now?
yeah.
All right. This is probably going to be 3 or 4 shows, but here it is.
Okay.
World's focused on Africa, right? Because they got the minerals, right?
Yeah.
Going to give you a hint. Think technology. Think who's going to be the next most powerful nation in the world and rule the world for the next 100 years. We're going to uncover all of that. And then think about this. Is there some place that has a landmass 3 times the size of Africa that has more minerals than any other continent on Earth? And have we reached a point in time that it might be the deciding factor in who rules the next 100 years or the next 1,000 years on planet Earth? You have an answer for me?
Well, I'm gonna guess Antarctica.
Nope.
No. Okay. I just thought because that's so mysterious to everybody. So
Guess again. One more time. You get
one
2
more
guesses.
time. Larger landmass, continent. South America?
Nope.
Oh, I'm 2 for 2. Wow. Okay.
Think Elon Musk. So I'll give you a third question, a third try.
Okay.
Think Elon Musk and what Elon Musk's vision is. People who don't have vision, regardless of how much technology they have, can't accomplish what they want. Elon is the biggest visionary in the world, in my opinion. I'm going to help you.
Okay.
It ain't
Please do.
any continent on the planet. It's the moon.
Space. Okay. I was gonna
It's
actually
space.
ask, are we talking about a landmass on the planet? But
I specifically fooled you on purpose so we could drag it out. So we're going to be talking about the importance of the moon. Its has come just like Africa's time has come, and it's going to change the world. Change it. Absolutely change it.
and that's quite a rabbit hole to go down because of a lot of the conspiracies, a lot of the beliefs, a lot of the thoughts. Where did it come from? What is it made of? What's been going on up there, right? So that
Facts.
would be at least 3 shows.
Facts get rid of the lies. And basically, God told me when He sent me on this journey, your platform will be different than others. It will be based on history, hundreds, thousands of years of history. The Bible, 70% of which is what? History. So that when you tell the stories that I tell you to tell, it'll be just like Burkina Faso coming out with a red folder. It's based on historical facts that cannot be refuted. A fact is a fact. Once it's happened, it cannot be taken back. So that's where we go with most of these shows that I do. That's where we'll go when we go to the moon. We'll go with a red folder that will erase the story that's on the table and print a new one.
Yeah, and I have a lot of questions, so that's going to be very interactive when we do that to uncover where the truth is. Well, again, Larry, thank you so much. Really appreciate
Thank you.
your knowledge, and you do such an amazing job with pulling all this information together with the slides. I try to have those slides because they're so chock full of information, but then, we want to also, it's just so nice to be able to see you full screen when you talk about this stuff. So I think we have it down to a pretty good system of the slides and the interactive conversation. And I think we're getting better each time. Yeah, so
We'll get there. You're probably the best host or hostess that I do shows with.
Oh, thank
Because
you.
frankly, what happens with many of the shows, they're so busy bringing in dozens and dozens and dozens of speakers that they don't know anything about whatever that individual speaker is going to talk about. For whatever reason, you either have knowledge or at least you're on the spot able to think of questions and probe this and make it better. It's better than me just regurgitating. So I think you brought out a lot of things today, and I thank you.
Thank you. All right. Well, till next time. We'll see you soon.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Hey, Elisa V here. We all know that legal matters can be costly and stressful. Finding the right representation and dealing with high retainers and hourly bills adds up fast. But what if I told you there's a way to have legal insurance just like your health or car insurance? Legal Shield has leveled the playing field. From just $29.95 a month, you get access to lawyers for personal legal matters. From traffic tickets to real estate issues or trust matters, help is just a tap away on your phone. Call or text 516-493-1742 and use code ElisaLegal to start your journey to legal protection today.
What if I told you aging could be reversed? At Staying Alive Wellness Center, a hyper-advanced light system in Cape Canaveral is no longer a theory. It's measured in real, provable science. An independent lab out of Houston, Texas has confirmed with conclusive data your telomeres, those critical markers of cellular age, are actually lengthening. Yes, age reversal. This isn't hype. It's real data, verifiable, jaw-dropping, and real innovation finally catching up to biology. And your body is ready to respond. Visit us at stayingalive.com or call for an appointment. Recharge your body at the cellular level. What are you waiting for? A more youthful life is here now.